Hello, welcome to another episode of Tales from the Bridge. My name is Tristan.
And I'm Kevin.
And I'm Sam.
And we got some stuff to talk about, don't we?
We do.
Oh, yeah. We got a great book. And we got a new book that we're going to be talking about at the end, which I'm really excited to introduce to everybody.
We'll do a little bit of a random segment.
Yeah,
How he goes. And
what we've been reading, what we've been watching, maybe.
Yeah.
I watched a crazy sci-fi thriller movie that I want to tell you guys about. As usual, if you're joining the show and you haven't subscribed or followed us, do so.
And check us out on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and you can email us even.
Well, shall we?
can I say it? Let's make our way over to the bridge.
This is an interesting one. For anybody who's been into sci-fi like we have, you'll have thought of and read about people living in space. And people have conceptualized so many different ways of people living in space. And, there's just space stations, and there's other planets, and there's spaceships, and the whole bit. But one of the ones that we often hear about in semi-near future space colonization stories are boring out of asteroids and living inside of asteroids. This is a common trope that we see because it's a practical way that we could colonize space, gain real estate in a fairly cheap and easy way. And I mean, really, it's pure on science fiction at this point. It's not like we've ever done this before. But hypothetically, in theory, we could just go out to some asteroid and bore it out and spin the thing up so that it starts spinning and creates centripetal force so that you can stand on the inside of this thing and then fill it up with air. And you could live in there, right? That's something that we've heard about in science fiction. But there is a gentleman, a aerospace engineer named Dr. David Jensen. He was an aerospace engineer at Rockwell Collins, which is an aerospace company in the United States, who wrote a paper about how this could be done economically, and not only how it could be done economically, but how it could be done in 12 years. So he's come up with what he sees in theory as being a plausible way to go out to a particular asteroid, like he even names the asteroid, which one we should go to, and how we could do this very thing. So anyway, it absolutely blew my mind that this is something that somebody has made a plan about and has actually put some numbers to. He suggested that this could be done for the low price of $4.1 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but let's put this into context. NASA's planning to spend $93 billion on the latest moonshot, the latest moon missions. So that is a fraction of that cost. And it would apparently provide somewhere in the order of 1 billion square meters of land in space. Now, let's just assume that he's overly optimistic with this. Let's say he's half wrong on the price, or maybe he's only a quarter wrong on that. So maybe it's actually $16 billion. It's still a bargain. And so anyway, the way that he says that this could be done is you send up at the very beginning 4 spider self-replicating robots, which he talks about. And he says it's very plausible with existing technology, and a base station for these spider robots that would be able to build themselves, so they could build up to 3,000 other robots, and they would go in and do this mining. And he talks about a lot of the different engineering problems, and he has ideas about how to solve them. And he's not saying that all the solutions exist yet, or there's not a lot of other engineering problems that will need to be solved. But he's laid out a pretty darn good plan. And what has absolutely floored me is that some rich billionaire hasn't looked at this and said, that's kind of a good idea. We got folks trying to go into low Earth orbit. We've got folks trying to go to the Mars. And this seems like a perfect fodder for a billionaire. Let's go and mine out an asteroid, spin the thing up to get the gravity. You're protected from solar rays and radiation. You could pressurize the thing. And And you know what? He even worked out the total cost per square meter, $4.10 per square meter to build this thing, which is pretty darn cheap. You can't even build a house in Guelph for that amount, really. So I don't know. The numbers are probably off, but even if it's within the realm of possibility, it seems like a great idea. What do you guys think?
Pretty interesting. What are we doing on the asteroid? Are we just trying to get off Earth? Are we mining it? So we've got people, or I guess we're we're using resources from the asteroid itself. And are we getting different resources than we would get on the moon? Because the moon seems a little more permanent,
Right?
and it moves less. It's a little more close to to return if humans end up there. What are we doing on the asteroid? Did the doctor did he explain this?
It didn't, and honestly, it is definitely a solution to a problem that maybe we don't have. But let's say you did want to live into space, so that's the hypothetical, right? It's why do we need to do it? If you talk to Elon Musk, he says it's because if we need to diversify where humans live in case of cataclysmic issues, right? If the Earth becomes uninhabitable, if we don't have humans off of the Earth, then our species is done. So maybe that's an argument to do it. So maybe it's just to live there.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of Kim Stanley Robinson's 2312, where he has a vast array of these asteroids that have been hollowed out and turned into habitats for different reasons, and his imagination goes like right out there. Like there's a couple that you're like, all right, we're getting pretty creative here, but I like one of them was that you could save species from extinction. So
Right.
because of the environment going south here on the planet, and this is what's happening in his world in 2312, they're able to save habitats, and also they were able to use these as big farming communities that would create a food source, because of the loss of arable land on Earth. These hollowed out asteroids would become sort of like space farms, essentially, and you could grow food and help head off starvation on Earth. The thing is, you kind of have to time your transport back, and sometimes if you have an overabundance of elements, because some of these asteroids are so element rich and like rare elements or gold, silver, what have you, that all that surplus can also then be transported back to Earth. And then the third thing that sort of stands out from this book, I'm just sort of going off memory here, if it serves me correctly, was that they also used them as part of a transport system around the galaxy, so that you could kind of hitch a ride on a asteroid and get you part of the way there, and then take a spaceship the rest of the way or what have you. But it was used that they were used as sort of jumping off points and sort of transit
Around the solar system.
Yeah. So it's I mean, you're thinking very big and long term in a lot of these things, but that's the whole. You're going to hollow out something like this with self-replicating robots, and that's something you're already thinking long term to begin with. I love it all. Like I'm all for it. I think it's fantastic.
Well, and you could also have for industrial purposes, like a lot of people talk about let's move to orbit a lot of the industrial processes that we do on Earth that we shouldn't be. Let's see if we can do some of that, smelting of metals, for example. If we can do mining out in space, why can't we do smelting as well? It's super energy intensive, super polluting. That's something that we could do right outside of our entire ecosystem. Anyway, the problem is he talked about this one asteroid called Atira, Atira, and he says it's a good candidate. It's 4.8 kilometers in diameter, but it's also 80 times the distance to the moon. So it isn't close. It's not local, but he says that it's probably one of the best candidates out there.
The whole idea here is like we're an unusual creature in this universe where we don't even know if there's other creatures that think like this or think like us or have the ability to leave the planet they were born on. It looks like we're the only ones so far. So yeah, we should be figuring out how to get out and spread that, I guess, because in 1,000 years, if we're going to other solar systems, like that's going to be a pretty big deal, and we're going to be saying, why didn't you try to get to that asteroid earlier?
Mm.
Why didn't you have a station on the moon to get to Mars, as a port to get to Mars
Mm-hmm.
earlier? Why did you guys wait till the 22nd century? Like you should have been doing that in the starting it in the 20th or whatever it would be.
I
So,
agree. I agree.
yeah.
I don't believe in a lot of things, but I believe that yeah, I believe in entropy. The world is moving towards simplicity. The universe wants it, complexity to go away, and life is complexity. And any way that we can preserve that very precious complexity and kind of giving the finger to entropy, I'm all about that. And spreading life is an important thing. And as you say, we've not found any other intelligent life anywhere. So let's do our bit. Let's fight that SOB entropy and see what we can do.
Hmm.
Let's colonize these asteroids and do whatever we need to. That's
Yeah.
what I say.
No, you're right. I agree.
Well, I've been reading another Neil Stephenson book. After a nice light read, the Christopher Paolini book, I decided to go about as heavy as you can go. And so I started into a Neil Stephenson. And this one is one that I just skipped over and it didn't appeal to me. It was Reamde, Reamde. It's a misspelling of read me, and it's an interesting one. Like like a lot of his where he has taken a near future concept and explored it really well. And he is a prophet, right? This guy, he knows where a technology, where a societal concept is going to go, and he explores it well in his books. And so he started with kind of cyberspace in Snow Crash, and some of that stuff has come to life, some of it hasn't. But in this one, he was writing about cyber crimes and ransomware. There's very common now for people's computers to be encrypted and for people to ask for $1,000 in Bitcoin to get your computer unencrypted or your servers. He wrote this book before that was the thing, and he explores it and he talks about and how it could work. And he this is his thing. So it isn't one that I recommend to everybody because it's even denser than a lot of his other books, and it doesn't explore new ideas as much as a lot of other Neil Stephenson books. But I'm about halfway through, and I'm going to finish it, and it may get better. But I have enjoyed it, and now it's getting into a bit of a lull.
I read the fourth book in the Expanse series, which was, I think, maybe the weakest. It's just kind of the more of a diplomatic story on the one planet where there's just inner problems, and Holden and the crew come in to kind of help out. It's good. It's like really good. I'm happy to go there. I'm looking forward to the fifth book, but it was the most simple story out of the first four that I've read. Then I read Raft by Stephen Baxter, and this I really think listeners out there who know Kevin and know Kevin's kind of sci-fi and they've read Stephen Baxter, they're going to be like, Kevin, come on, man, you got to read this one next. But
Okay.
so I started from the very beginning with Raft, and I'm just going to take my time going through more Stephen Baxter because this is some real hard sci-fi, huge ideas. Raft, I imagine, since it's one of his early novels, if not his first, he's only going to get better, and I'm really looking forward to going into his world building and his books. I really enjoyed it, and just the more I read about Stephen Baxter himself and what he writes about, I'm very much looking forward to going back into his world. So a lot of the listeners out there that do like the Alistair Reynolds and the Hamilton and Banks, I think Stephen Baxter is just in that group, you know. And then the one that I finished maybe a week or so ago is Ken MacLeod's Beyond the Hollowed Sky, which is his most recent series. So it's the first, and the second book is out, and I believe there's one more coming out maybe next year, the year afterwards. Great concept. Ken MacLeod's a Scottish writer. He was friends with Ian M. Banks. And there's some really cool ideas. Again, I think this is a Kevin book. Sorry, Sam. I read 2 Kevin books.
I think they're
Uh,
Tristan books too.
yeah, well, I like the hard stuff too, right? Like I'm happy to go into these books that I don't understand those ideas, and I maybe will research afterwards to kind of figure out what did I miss and what does that mean. But Ken MacLeod's Beyond the Hollow Sky was fantastic, highly recommended, and I look forward to reading the second one. But Ken is a guest of honor at the Hugos next year, so that's kind of neat. I'd like to talk to him. We'll try and get him on the show. And Stephen Baxter too. I mean, this guy's almost legendary at this point.
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. Like, you've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune in to 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
Yeah.
I've been reading a big ship at the edge of the universe. Yeah, a big ship at the
restaurant at the end of the universe, Sam.
No. Seriously. So it's Alex White, A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe. It's the book one in the Salvagers series, and it's I went to this one because, again, we got a scrappy crew. You know, they maybe dabble in a little smuggling. We got some treasure hunting here. They're all veterans of a big space war and the famine war, they call it. But what's different is that magic is a common element within this version of humanity, and that I wasn't sure if I'd like or hate, and my Kobo says I'm 63% of the way to the book, and I'm still unsure if I like or hate the magic element of it. I'm unsure. This mixing of genre, it feels like a mix of genres, or it feels like a mashup in a way, and we've seen that done really well. So I was curious to see how this was done, and it's done mostly well. Like, I think I'm feeling, maybe I'm just having an indecisive month, guys. I can't decide what I like and don't like. But I maybe a little conflicted. For some parts of the story, it's really kind of fun and cool, and there's different types of specialized magic, and there's kind of a science principle attached to magic, and there's an organ that they all have that's mostly common, and that's where your special powers come from. But now that I'm saying it out loud, it sounds even worse. So but reading it somehow okay. Like, that's sort of, anyway. So that's what I've been reading this book. It's kind of fun. It's easy to like, end of the day, light, fun read. It's fine for the most part, and I do like the characters, and the way the story has been constructed is pretty cool as well, and it feels new with some of the usual tropes, but like it does feel kind of original, and that's okay to explore, and kind of what I'm here for. So so I've been reading that, and then we've been watching the second season of Invasion on Apple, and if you haven't checked that out, it's kind of fun. It's the first season's really good, and there's different storylines, alien invasion, all that stuff. It gets kind of fun, family viewing as well, and the storylines are are good enough that we keep coming back every week. So anyways, that's sort of been my sci-fi extracurricular.
Cool. Well, I've watched a film recently that I've got to mention. This film is not for the faint of heart. If you don't like a little bit of horror and weirdness and hedonism, and yeah, this is a weird one. This is Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool. I watched this recently. I like Cronenberg films. I really do like how weird they are, like how dark they are. Existence. His most recent one was Crimes of the Future. I really like that one. It's so weird and so beautiful. But Infinity Pool is his son's. He's taking after his dad, and he's making some wild movies. This film is
He's
very
the
dark.
son of David Cronenberg, right?
Son of David Cronenberg, the Canadian. So they're both Canadian filmmakers. Actually, I'm not sure if Brandon was born here or not. I think
Hmm.
so. Um,
He is.
but
He's Canadian.
yeah, okay. But the film itself was Canadian funded. It was funded by other countries as well, because they must have filmed it overseas. But basically, it's, and I mean, if you want to go, so if you like those dark horror, thriller, sci-fi, twisted, hedonistic films, you're gonna like this. If you don't want to know what it's about because you want to go in blind, then just skip over the next 30 seconds to a minute or so. But I just want to tell you guys, our main character goes to a resort in which he meets some people, and it's obviously just these rich people. They get into trouble, and you realize that, or they realize that when they get into trouble, like if you break the law in this country, they're so strict. And I do believe this is a fictional country where they will execute people who, do like drugs or murder, even if it's manslaughter or accidental. um, but the way that they get around it with the tourists that come to their country, because that generates so much money for their economy, is they make a double of the person who committed the crime. So now the family member of the person lost, or how they execute the person who is wrong, who has been convicted, their double is created and they are murdered. The double is murdered. Okay. So now you have this person who goes, basically gets away with murder.
Hmm.
All they had to do is make a double of themselves. They clone themselves, and then the clone is murdered, and that is justice. So it really critiques this whole. I mean, it really comes down on rich society and says that these rich people, basically, he gets with this group of people that just start doing horrible crimes and horrible things to each other, and they get away with anything because all they have to do is make a clone and kill that clone, and they can keep doing what they do. And it really examines so many deep dark parts of the human psyche. And I just love those films. If you like Cronenberg films, or Gaspar Noé makes films like this that are just like mind-bending dark films that really, they stick with you for a few days afterwards, you'll like Infinity Pool. If you don't like horror or thriller, don't watch this one. But I was a bit excited with this one because it was just so weird. Apparently, Beau is Afraid fits into this as well, which I've got to see. But I love weird films, so if our listeners like weird film, go check that out. If you don't, if you like Avatar and Marvel films, don't watch this.
I would say that killing your clone is not justice, but that's just me.
Maybe it is, and maybe it's not your clone. What if it is actually you that is the one that is murdered, and the clone keeps going on? You walk away afterwards just like so thankful for your own sanity. So yeah.
When you say you walk away from something and you're thankful for your own sanity, that it's been an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Listeners will know that this month we were reading To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Chris Paolini. This is a story about a xenobiologist named Kira who is bound to an alien kind of like skin suit, it turns out, during a planet survey. And this hidden suit sparks a conflict with other aliens, and off we go. We're off to the races here. It's a sort of fast-paced book that kind of has one foot in adult fiction and maybe the other in YA. Like I said, the pacing's pretty fast. The things veer away from the silly just in time to sort of keep it in maybe in the adult-ish realm, but keeps it fun. It's a light read, a lot of fun, likable characters. I mean, you got some tropes here. You got a scrappy crew on a beat up smuggling freighter. And this is a trope that is fun, but certainly becoming maybe a bit overdone. It feels like when I see that sort of those tropes creep in, that the book is being written for the purpose of screen, or for the hopes of screen down the road. But it's still fun, and I enjoyed it enough to recommend it, and I'd love to hear what you guys thought of it.
I very much enjoyed this book for sure. I think was almost a little bit excited when I first finished it. I was like, damn, that was the book I needed to read right now. I was very, very excited about it. So I thoroughly enjoyed it the whole way through. I'm fine with tropes. If they're done in a way, and I can't even describe what it is that makes a trope done well, but if it's done in a way that I accept as this is fun, this is fine by me, I'm good to go. Tropes are not necessarily bad. I think I mean, it's always the hero's journey can be repeated over and over again, and will still, like, most people will still watch it or read it. I mean, like you said, it sounded like it was made for film or written with that in mind. I think that's what's happening to a lot of readers these days is maybe they do just want to visualize something. At the same time, reading a book 100 years ago must be different than reading a book now, right? Because we've all been watching films all our lives that when we read, we can kind of see it like it was on the big screen. And before movies, and where everyone was watching movies all the time, when you read, you were making it up a lot more. So either way, I was fine with I liked the crew, even though I knew, like, okay, so they don't get along at first, they don't trust each other, and they're the captain
Captain Salvio
Falcone.
Falcone. Yeah.
Falcone. So yeah, it's his ship, and he does not like her. He doesn't trust her. There's a lot of resistance, which is very typical. And then when they all started to soften up, I really liked the crew. I was like, no, this is fine. I'll forgive this one. I think a lot of readers are able to do that though, right? Like, this is a pretty popular book. A lot of people are reading this. I was just looking at the Goodreads. There's 53,000 reviews. That's pretty good for a science fiction book that came out in the last 3 years. When I do think of the book itself, I can't visualize a whole lot. I can visualize the weapon, the skin. What do they call it again? I've forgotten all the names, guys.
The Xeno skin suit.
Yeah, there's another name for it.
It's
Is it Soft Blade?
Soft blade. Yeah.
Soft blade.
So soft blade. I can kind of visualize soft blade. And maybe it's the really well described, or it must have been if it's sticking with me. But I mean, the rest of the settings, the ships, and they're basically on ships the whole time. They don't really go to planets. They don't go to other places. They stop at a space station for a bit, but it's all you're in tight quarters. So I can't really visualize a whole lot besides stuff that I've already seen before, which is just hallways and corridors and small quarters and bridges, and then just conversations and action that take place within those limited environments. But overall, fantastic. Enjoyed it. Great ride. I think there's a prequel, which I have not checked out. Maybe Kevin did. I'd like to hear about that, but I'd go back to that world. I like this Paolini guy. Seems pretty good.
Yeah, me too. I enjoyed it. I mean, I had read this. I had read this before. I think I mentioned to you guys, and I got through it. I had been a Christopher Paolini fan for a long time because I read all of the Aragon books to my kids. And for those of you who don't know, the Inheritance Cycle is his most popular series. It's a young adult book about dragons, of course, and it's a fantasy series, and that brought him much popularity and fanfare amongst a certain crowd. So this was his first science fiction novel, and as Sam said, it's more oriented towards adults. But I agree, Sam. I think it does kind of veer into the YA territory as well. But I never know. I can never tell. If it's an enjoyable romp of a book, I just enjoy it, and I did enjoy it. The first time I read this, I remember reading it, and I remember enjoying it, and then I promptly forgot it. And Tristan, I think you said basically the same thing, and which was funny because I forgot the plot lines. Like, it's not like my memory is amazing, but I couldn't remember a darn thing. So when I read this the second time, Sam, when you suggested that we should read it, it was almost like reading a new book because I had forgotten so much of it. I don't know. It's funny, but the second time through, it stuck with me a little bit more. Maybe I'm paying more attention this time, and it is noteworthy that it is very similar to a lot of other universes. And as you say, Tristan, it is still enjoyable even if the ideas aren't super original. The characters are designed to be easy to connect with. There's tons of action, it's pretty much nonstop action, right? It's a page turner from the perspective of just wanting to know what's going to happen. He does some world building. He's got the Numenists, who are some religious order that thinks that numbers are sacred in some way. There's the Entropists, who are really cool, kind of more technologically advanced humans. The Entropists I thought were pretty interesting. In fact, two of the characters had a hive mind; their minds were connected. Um, and he also has ship minds. So these human folk, they started out as humans. Their brains are taken out of a human body and they're put into supercomputers, and they're basically made into like AI godlike creatures that become ship minds. Not unlike culture minds in Ian M. Banks' books, only they're significantly more human and less godlike. But they are quite powerful, and that's pretty cool. And he explores that concept a bit. And I mean, I do want to read Fractal Noise, which is the second book in the series, which is a prequel, as you say. I have not yet read it, but I think I will. I think I will. And for those of you who have read The Inheritance Cycle, some of you may remember Angela the Herbalist, who was by far my favorite character in that series. She makes a silent appearance in this book. It is not, her name isn't mentioned, but it is almost certainly her and her cat. I can't remember her cat name. Um,
How could
uh,
this be?
yeah,
How could
Solemn
this
Bum.
be?
Solemn Bum. It basically, I think she just lives through the ages. She's a real smarty pants, Angela the Herbalist, and she makes it through with her werecat named Solemn Bum. And
That's
yeah,
amazing.
a lot of people may not have noticed that cameo, but she's inside of a ship um hold when they're moving refugees out of a war-torn area. And it's obviously Angela, even though they don't say her name.
That's kind of
That's
awesome.
really, yeah, that is kind of the one of the coolest well, characters. I mean, she's gone through 500-600 years, maybe more,
Probably, yeah.
or a
But
thousand, a thousand really, I guess.
even in the Aragon series, she was already pretty ancient and mysterious, and so suddenly she moves into the future, which is
What a
neat.
great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
yeah.
pretty good at characters. I did like and again, I can't remember the main bad guy's name, but the really scary dude with the cape. Um, he was described in a way that was creepy. Like it was you did not want to go close to him, and she needed to battle him, and the way that he controlled. You remember the concept of how they controlled
Yeah. Are you talking about the great and mighty Kuthane?
the
The
Kuthane? Yeah,
Yeah, he's the one of the baddies, the jellyfish dudes.
yeah, and he's basically made it so that genetically the other species that work for his side cannot speak poorly of him or think poorly of him.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine that just you become a leader of an entire race of intelligent entities, and you genetically modify them, that if they even think about trying to revolt against you, that they will become physically ill and they can't actually do it. So he's pretty safe in his position, which is maybe why he calls himself the great and mighty Kuthane.
For me, I would, rather than a prequel, I kind of want to see what happens next. And
Yeah,
by the end of it, I really enjoyed all the characters and where their arcs had sort of placed them. I I couldn't decide if I found the jellies to be a bit silly. I kind of, I think I'm conflicted on, I'm undecided on whether or not I like Earth analogs for aliens, and some people do it really well, right? And it's pretty common. But I think when I see an author take a stab at an alien that's really just a little bit outside and a little unknown, and not like there's an unknowable element to it, I think that's when it's done really well. And so that's where I sort of talk about like how sometimes this book sort of veered towards the silly a little bit. That's sort of what I sort of comes to mind is the sort of description of the aliens. I like the hive mind, again, a bit tropey, but for this book and where the plot goes is really kind of essential. I enjoyed it, and I have to sort of remind myself that this is kind of a fun romp. I'm getting hoity-toity about my aliens. I don't know. Like, this is not the place I expected to be.
Well, it's a spectrum too, right? Like
Yeah.
something I've seen from reading with you guys in the last 3 years is science fiction is a spectrum, and you kind of have, this fantasy element at one end, and you do have this really hard sci-fi at one end, and it's where in the spectrum are you? And I think that we're in the middle to lower spectrum of science fiction with a book like this, and then you can go to the Kevin books, the Alistair Reynolds, and the Hamilton, and then you sort of go middle to more hard, and yeah, where do we want to be on that spectrum is really interesting to kind of gauge.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, and like I said, like that's sort of, I had to kind of keep my remind myself of is what I'm reading and what part of the genre I was in, and that I was here for a romp and kind of a fun. And I actively was seeking that out when I got to this book. I was sort of like, I need a break. I need some fun, and I definitely got it with this.
I want to find out what we're reading. This
yeah, what are we reading, man?
Oh man. Okay. Well, I mean, I got to tell you, I don't entirely know what we're reading because it's a book I've never read, and I'm really hoping that it's a good recommendation. I think it is. Because it's a Goodreads People's Choice Award winner for this past year. And it is by an author named Emily St. John Mandel, who also wrote Station 11. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it was made into TV show on HBO Max. It was a sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian book. It was an excellent TV series. I watched them all and I loved it. I've not read Station 11, but she has written a new book, which is this People's Choice Goodreads Award winner, and it's called Sea of Tranquility, and it is supposed to be a book that explores concepts around time travel, but also around the simulation hypothesis, that maybe we live in a simulation. And her writing is quite good. Like, she's very character based. I really enjoyed at least the TV show. My wife read Station 11. And it was also, by the way, a Canada Reads book for the last year, and it was nominated for Canada Reads, which in Canada is it's high praise. So this one is from the same author. She's Canadian as well, the author, and she's written 6 novels, and this is her latest. So I'm expecting something good from this. The concepts sound exciting: simulation hypothesis, time travel. So I don't know about you guys. Have you heard about this one before?
I haven't heard of the book, but I've read Station 11 and loved it. Okay. So I'm excited to read this for sure. It was just totally not on my radar at all. So I'm excited for this one.
Wasn't on my radar either. But as soon as I saw that it was an award winner and that it was recent, it debuted as a New York Times bestseller. So it's apparently doing quite well.
Yeah, I've heard of this, and yep, that's all that I have on this one. I've just heard of the name, probably because of a Goodreads. But no, I'm looking forward to it. It's not very long. It's short.
Yeah, it should be quick read. 255 pages, thereabouts.
Yeah, so that'll be a nice, quick little read. It's also, and just for anyone going for the audiobook, it is narrated by our old friend, John Lee.
Oh, John Lee, all right.
Who does the Hamilton books.
Yeah, Peter F. Hamilton, yeah.
And a couple of others, but no, cool.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
And there was this TV show for Station 11. Did you guys watch that? Was that any good?
Yeah, I watched them all. Yeah.
No, I didn't see the series, but yeah, the book was great. And I haven't read any of her other books. I mean, it's weird now that I think of it. I really enjoyed it. Usually when you read a book that you really enjoy by an author, you keep going back to that author. And I have not. So I'm happy to.
Well, happy to help.
Very cool.
Once again, thank you for joining us on Tales from the Bridge. We really appreciate you being here. We've got another interview coming up soon. You're going to like this one. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.